Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. I've got my altered book art journal on the table today. If you didn't see the cover of that being made, I will link that in the description below. And I discovered that I appear to have done something in it. I have no idea when that was. It must be years ago. I don't even recognise this. I assume it's a stamp. I have no idea, no recollection of that whatsoever, unless I got this in a second-hand bookshop and somebody else had already, no, I mean those torn strips of paper, that's me. So I found that, and yeah, I think I may just have to stick something over that because it doesn't inspire me in the slightest to do anything. So it's not a completely blank journal, isn't that good news? But I'm going to dive in probably on the central pages for today because that's where I want to go. I've got lots of leftovers on the table, mop-ups and leftover die cuts, even some leftover sentiments from a tag time episode. That die cut was also from that same tag time episode. These little birds and leftover panels of paper are from a few minutes of fun that we did with a tag quartet. I've even got some bits and bobs from Friday fun sessions on the PaperArtsy people Facebook group, where I drop in occasionally to do a little bit of live playtime. So I don't know, it's spring, isn't it? And we seem to be in a world of pink at the moment. Don't know what's happening to me. I don't really know. The leftovers were sort of saying, try me, so that's what I'm going to do. I really don't know exactly where this page is going to go, but we'll find out together. So I will, oh God, so Tom Sawyer, bad language, appalling words. I'm ripping that page out and not using it. I suppose it's going to be everywhere, isn't it? Because that's the age it comes from. So I will keep an eye out for that, and where I see it, I will attempt to lose it because I don't want it underlying, even covered up in here. So yes, covering it up, probably the best way to go. So yeah, I'm going to go all the way to the edges of this, I think, because it's quite dark paper. Quite a dark brown sepia, which I think in springtime is not quite what I'm after. So I'll take my gesso right to the edges of the pages, and there we are. Good. And I think what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come straight in with those mop-up bits of my tissue paper that have just got some green paint on. I think rather than count on the gesso to really do that, I'm gonna put in just a little bit of glue as well. I didn't really think about where I was going to put them. That's maybe have that on the top half over there, and have this going down this side here, something like that. Lots of green, lots of springtime greens. So the gesso probably would have been moist enough to hold the tissue paper, but I'm not taking any chances. Just going to go all the way down there, and yeah, I've got quite jagged, I've got quite sort of prominent edges on that, but I'm just going to go with it. I would usually soften and kind of edge that, but the chances are it'll end up getting covered up or softened by something that I layer over the top of it. This is just a background layer to solve that empty page syndrome. If you've got rice paper, you can use that. If you've got pre-tinted tissue papers, you can use that. As we've done in an art journal in the past, you could use paper napkin. There's some even leftover bits of the paper serviettes we used last time around. So I'm just going to go with that for now. Maybe a little softening of gesso over the top, just picking up, more than anything else, it's picking up those textured wrinkles with a little bit of white highlighting, just giving you that sense of the texture in those wrinkles, which are completely welcome. I have no problem at all with having wrinkly textures in my papers. I'm wondering about a little bit of twiggy branching with my stencil here. Maybe a little bit of additional something going off across the page, maybe in green rather than brown. That might be quite interesting. Or we'll go with could be white. I could do a little, I could do a little pumice stone spritz, couldn't I? Let's see. Maybe, can't decide. This is the trouble with setting out with absolutely no idea where you're going. This is pumice stone oxide, and I'm thinking I'll just, I don't know, spritz, spritz, spritz. It'll be a gentle branch going off in the background, and then of course what I can do is flip over and print the reverse of that on this side. Oh, just lovely muddy texture because I slid as I did it, but that's all good. It's all just nice. Having covered up all the sepia from the book pages, I've now got sepia going on all over the place here, but I'm gonna let it happen. I might, since I've got this here, do just a little spritz of water onto that and print it onto, what have I got here, just some card. So I've got another mop-up in the making, and show you that you can actually get a decent print if you're focusing fully with that stencil. There we are, and you get that lovely outline of the branches going on as well. I'm going to knock that back a little bit on here because there's a little bit too much brown going on now for my liking. I might give it a spritz and just pick it up. I was enjoying the green. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a bit of pumice stone, love a bit of grey, but I don't think that's quite what I'm after today. So, as you can see, if you get in there in time, you can knock it back. That's just got a nice vintage look to it now, and a bit more texture. I'm going to make sure this is spritzed so that I can clean it off later. Give this a little wipe in the nozzle, because if you've used an oxide spray, you always want to give it a little wipe. So part of what I'm thinking with this tag, that was a really vivid mop-up tag from some Matint playtime, is I'm thinking of doing, I quite often use these tags as a structural element by cutting them in half, or I could rip it. I quite like having, we'd have that sticking out that way, couldn't we, if we rip? In two minds. Let's have a look at some other elements and see. So this was a leftover die cut, just cut out of some, it was a gel print on copy paper. Let's have a look at that. I think that might be too sort of delicate. What about, I've got these leftover little birds here, cut out from a, look, maybe we're in a bird kind of mood. I've also cut a couple of little sort of twiggy wreaths, which are rather nice. Maybe it's going to be a little bird sort of on a branch here, and another one kind of looking up towards him. Oh, that's cute. It's cute. Could he be down here as well? Are you? You're looking in the same direction. You're the same bird. That's cute. That's starting to look like something that I might quite enjoy, I think. That's starting to feel helpful. So I think what I might do is rip a little bit of this paper to give myself a sort of branchy thing going on over here. It's going to wind up being sort of the same colour as him because it's from the same paper. Let's see what this gives us along here. Just a kind of place for him to perch, like so. Quite like that. Let's rip that. Let's not think too hard. Let's put it in. So as I thought, those edges of the tissue paper are going to become disguised quite quickly. That's nice. And then we might want another little branch for this nest to kind of rest into. It's just good for structural purposes and a bit of definition. I can add a little bit extra that we've just ripped off there. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to remove a little bit of this because it's too long for my eye at the moment. I suppose if I took it off at the edge of the page as well, that would help. Yes, good. Okay, let's glue this down as well. I'm wondering about tinting that little garland, that little wreath, with maybe some pumice stone or maybe something else. Let's have a look. It's quite nice in white because it's just kind of there but not too visually arresting. But maybe, actually, since it's out, I think this could be quite good. I'm going to do it over another piece of card because obviously it's going to give me an imprint as well as I do it, work as a sort of stencil or a mask. I'm going to give it just a little spritz of the pumice stone. Yeah, I've got more ink behind the twigs than on them. And then what I'll do is just a little flick of maybe something like vintage photo into that to get a bit of texture going. Little spritz of water, which will both activate the oxidizing of the oxide ink, but also allow that vintage photo to just spread around while I've got all that ink on the page there. Yeah, so that's just got a kind of nice subtle twiggy look to it. I'm going to pick a bit up for that little leaf there, pick a bit up for that little bit of leaf there, and then while all that's on that bit of card, which is already quite nice in itself, but I'm going to steal some of it to tint these twigs in case I want those as well later. So just picking up, isn't that interesting, the pumice stone oxide plus vintage photo ink is giving me a real frayed burlap look. Could have just gone with frayed burlap in the first place. I'm going to spritz and flick just a little bit of water at this while I'm at it because it's going to give me a nice background to play with another time with just sort of some quite interesting textures. We'll have a look at that later on when it's dried and we're finished. I'm just going to lie it flat to dry somewhere out of the way. Like that, and I like that. I like both of those. That's very pretty. So I'm going to dry those with my heat tool just so they're ready to play with, and I'll be back shortly. You'll notice I seem to have moved on from the notion of going pink. In fact, I'm going to move the pink things out of the way because they're now distracting my eye. I've headed into greens and browns, just a sort of springtime thing. This was also lying around left over on the desk. That's from one of my own stamp sets, a little piece of ephemera, and it's rather calling to me at the moment. I'm just gonna darken the edges of these little birds so that they show up a little more. I'm going to use scorched timber for that because it's a beautiful dark cool brown that'll just see how that flicks up the silhouette of the bird. I'm going to put some on his feet so that they can show against the branch that he's perched on, and just catch his beak as well, like so. Another thing I love to do with these birds, and I think I'm tempted to do it today, is to just create a little sketchy internal drawing, I suppose, sketchy addition to the birds. And I usually do, look how that makes him pop against the page, isn't that great? So simple, just gives you that little shadow that allows the bird to show up. But I think I am going to take just a little black marker pen, fine liner, and just round the inside of the bird, just very sketchy, very loose. I quite often fill in the beak. and I quite often fill in the feet. But it's just, to me, it just gives them another little bit of presence. There he is. Same with this one, just round, catch the beak. Round and nice and sketchy. So again, any die cuts you've got are always just the starting point. You can add extra detailing, you can add stamping. They're already on quite nice papers because they're on those Wallflower papers. That's what they were left over from. Just gives him a little bit more presence on the page. I'm wondering about cutting out the middle of this so that we can use it somewhere. I'm wondering about adding a little bit of stenciling across the page. I'm wondering about these branches and whether they're going to, yes they are, is the answer. They are going to be part of the game. Let's have a look. Maybe that's there, maybe that's there. So those branches aren't bare, they've got some foliage coming. Good to know. Good to know that spring is on the way. Want you as well? No, because you're too straight. Okay, let's leave that there for now and just let my eye get into that while I chop up around this nice bit of ephemera. It works with the bit in the middle as well, but I'm just thinking it would be quite fun to have this gone. These are not very sharp scissors. Where are my sharp scissors? A little sharper. I'll just make life easier as I snip around the inside, cutting circles. Ah, what a joy. There we go. But if I can get that around and about, I think that's going to make quite a nice bit of ephemera to maybe just have perched somewhere on the page. I may well be going to cut it in half so I can have some on each side of the page. I think it's probably stamped in olive archival. I'm not sure. So yeah, definitely. Definitely we'll cut it in half, and I'm going to take half up here. I'm going to take half down here. Something like that. Just gives that extra bit of interest. I'm just wondering about trying this instead of that note too much. I like the leafy one there. Wondering about that. Something like that, something like that. I've now decided that is too much up there, so let's try this one again. Yeah, I think it wants a bit less over here. I think this is sort of the main focal point. This is a secondary focal point, as it were. So I think that works quite well, positioning wise. Just a little gentle branch there. We could have, yeah, let's see if I trim that off to just create a smaller sprig. That could do that. Yes, happy springtime. Happy springtime to us. I think maybe a little bit of stenciling. Or is it maybe just as simple as some blue spatter? No, let's find a stencil. Gonna find a stencil that I want to use. Back in a sec. So I think I'm just going to go dotty. Bubble, it's called. It's apparently number 2, the second of the Tim Holtz stencils. This is Speckled Egg Distress Ink. And I'm just going to put some very light little bubbles. If they're too light, I might add in a little bit of Salvaged Patina to just liven them up. So yeah, it's subtle, but it's doing something delicious. Just, yeah, adding a little bit of almost spring sky colour to what's going on here. I'm going to take some down in this corner as well. A bit of speckled egg, a little bit of salvaged patina, and yeah, it can go over here. So a little bit of stencil detail Maybe a little bit here just to draw the eye. Oh, I love that. I love that. Couldn't be simpler, but it's just giving me a little bit of extra something going on. It may be so subtle that you can't see what's happening. I'm going to zoom in. Forgive me for the travel sickness. There we are. So yeah, those little dots of colour. And I think I'm going to glue these down because I'm pretty sure I want them there. Might, oh, hello. Might give them a little flick around the edge with that sponge that I've just been using for the Speckled Egg and Salvaged Patina. Happy with that one up there? Yeah, I think so. A little bit of inking for you too. In fact, you've got some dots on. You got dotted with that stencil. And there. That's quite fun. I'm thinking pen lid again. I want pen lid, paint lid. Could do it with a pen lid. That would be very little dots if I did it with a pen lid. I'm thinking a bit of white paint onto the mat up here. Oh, that's a lot of white paint. I might shovel some of that straight back in because that's really an unnecessary amount to be spending on this page. Yeah, we are. It's a nearly empty pot anyway, so I'm not worried about contaminating a little bit. I'll probably be using it for spatter quite soon only, so that's fine. If there's something I probably wouldn't do that if it were a brand new paint pot full of paint that I don't want to mess up. I'm going to just spread that out a little bit on the mat and then grab my trusty lid to do a little bit of this kind of thing again. So I've got the tiny pale blue bubbles, I've got this wreath here, I've got this circular ephemera, so I'm just accentuating that little bubble motif with a little bit of pen lid work. And in fact I think I do want some smaller ones. The pages in this book are smaller than some of the ones I've used in other art journals, so there's not as much room as I'm used to working with, so some smaller bubbles might be quite nice. Shall I try with this? Anything's a tool. There you go. Oh, perfect. Just exactly what the doctor ordered. Little tiny bubbles of white. And it's about optimism, it's about hope, it's about rising spring temperatures, a light in the air. It's almost a moment of joy in the spring, that little bubble of joy that can sometimes rise in your heart on a beautiful spring morning. And bubbles of joy, goodness knows, are welcome enough at the moment. I'll take them wherever I can find them. Good, need to wipe that off. So hopefully not glue my pen shut. And yeah, you know what I'm going to do with the paint that's left on the mat there. Just adding a little bit of water so that I can. And there we are, we hit the little bird. Oh, hello, little bug. Sorry, murder on camera. That should turn me viral, shouldn't it? On camera bug murder. Sorry, bug. I don't want you crawling into my artwork, thank you. Do you know what? This page might be pretty much done. There's something very pleasing about the simplicity of that to me. Something that almost doesn't want to do anything else. Maybe, well, I need to glue these chaps down. Obviously I want some words. I'm thinking there's a lovely space for words going on here, potentially a little echoing word up here. I'm wondering if we want just something a little more heading off from him, or do we let him have pride of place up here on the branch, I think. Don't want to disturb him. Great, I'm going to glue this down and just spend a bit of time looking again and see if anything else springs to mind that I might want to add. I've got a speckled egg crayon lying here that I'm just sort of feeling like I want to add into the mix. And with the crayons, you can activate them with water, or actually just the moisture in your fingers is very often enough to just soften some of those crayon lines. And it's just adding a little bit of shadowy texture in places. I want a little bit here. Just a little touch of additional colour, a little touch of additional spring sky. I don't want to get too much water on the page because I don't want to disturb those other bubbles. If I start putting water on the page, those bubbles will soften because they're distressing can oxide. That's almost enough for me, I think. Am I bothered? A question for myself to look at now. Am I bothered by this? It's because it's not quite straight. It's going over the crease. That's quite pleasurable. I think it's time to glue the birds down and have a peer around the craft room for words and see what comes to mind. Back in a sec. Just wondering about taking a risk with stamping my apple blossom branch direct onto the page. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm just thinking it might be nice. I had that original thought about having the Twiggy stencil going across the page, and I like that. I've glued these down there, they're just drying. I'm just wondering about adding a little bit of extra stamping detail, maybe up there and one coming down here, just to, I don't know, echo these sprigs, these twigs, the botanicals in the tissue paper in the background. What I haven't done, I realise, is what I usually do in these altered book journals, is I haven't glued these pages down to the ones behind them yet, but I can always do that later on. So at the moment they're still quite floppy, but that gesso background and the tissue paper has given them a bit more presence. This is partly the reason I'm hesitating about this is that it will be of a different scale. It's a different level of detail. These botanical drawings are very large, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, eh? Let's see, what colour do I want to take? Brown, I think, to be branchy. So maybe potting soil, maybe a nice neutral brown, soft, cool brown. I'm going to put it on a stamping block and we'll find out. I might start with the one down here, because if that one works, then I'll know it's meant to be. But because I haven't got a very stable background surface, it may not be the best of stampings. But maybe we just embrace that imperfection. Maybe we just allow. Thank you. You know when you have a gut instinct and you think this could go horribly wrong, or this might just be the making of things. So one of the joys of this branch is it can go in every which direction. So that one happens to be dangling downwards. Up here, it's going to head upwards. It's going to go across that. Well, if I move it across a little bit, it doesn't have to go across that ephemera, and I can just finish off the image. So I've got a little bit of paint on the stamp that I am going to spritz immediately with water. So one thing you don't want is to have paint drying on your stamp, because that will affect its ability to stamp cleanly. So I'm going to get that off straight away. It was left over from those paint lid stampings. But that branch is not quite reaching the edge of the page, so I'm just going to take a little brown pen and complete the branch over there. I'm thinking now that it's there, maybe I want to colour in those leaves. See, you think you're doing a quick journal page. Now, I know that these tissue papers were a mop-up of a combination of greens, Hey Pesto and Lawn and Granny Smith. So hopefully if I put a combination of those on the mat here, anything I paint onto these leaves will coordinate, will tone in nicely, or at least echo this here. I'm going to take you out again a little bit because I noticed the book is going off camera because I've now got my paints down here. And I'm going to take a water brush just because that means I get a nice wash of paint. So these are opaque paints, apart from the Hey Pesto, which I think is semi-transparent. But what I don't want is to lose all the detail in my stamp. So if I do it with a little touch of water in the mix, that will mean the stamping detail stays put underneath and we don't lose. So I hope you can see that that is giving me a range of greens. I'm picking up the paint fairly randomly. I'm not really mixing it as such, but I'm picking up combinations. Sometimes a bit more Lawn, sometimes a bit more Hey Pesto, sometimes a bit more Granny Smith. And there are places on the mat where they are mixing. And then we're just going to colour the base of those buds as well. And it's echoing these leaves, it's echoing the colours on the... So there, that paint didn't have enough water in, so while it's still wet, I'm just going to pick it up a little bit so that, as I say, I don't lose my leafy veins underneath. And then when I see it's a bit too acid, I'll add a little bit of more of the Lawn, which is a slightly bluier green. If it's become a little bit too bluey green, then I can add a bit more of the Hey Pesto. If it's too dark, I can add some Granny Smith. So it's just a question of looking as you go and seeing whether the colours are suiting what else is happening. And I am going to need a little bit of French roast as well, so that I can capture that trunk. I do love a gnarly bit of branch. That's leaf, isn't it, there? There we go. So you can see now those are starting to come to life. Oh, let's not wipe that up completely just yet, because who knows who knows whether we mightn't want some more. This is French roast, my all-time most loved PaperArtsy brown, very cool dark brown, and it is already just a semi-opaque, so adding a little bit of water should mean that I'll get to keep seeing all those gnarly bits of bark underneath. That's partly why I use the water brush as well. So you can spritz a bit of water onto your acrylic paint to create those lighter washes, to mean that you're going to have a paint that is not going to cover up all the detail on the page. You can use a water brush. That's another way to get that softness of touch. Or you can use a transparent medium, like, for instance, watercolour, or the Matints, which you've heard me raving about on a number of occasions by now. What my brain is slightly doing at the moment is wondering whether I'm going to create little pink apple blossom buds. Having said this isn't going pink, I can feel those buds kind of crying out, but I think I'm going to keep them white because I'm enjoying... There's been a lot of pink around here lately, and I am learning to love it. But sometimes I don't want it. And I think today is a day when I don't want it. I want to fulfill my own desire for not pink. So let's just finish that branch in that direction. What I might do is give an extra dot of white to them, just to let them pop out of the background a little bit. So now I think I am finished with that green paint. I think that's done. Let's get myself a little bit of white. Maybe just working out of the lid will be enough, because I don't need much for these buds, and it's just to bring them into focus just a little bit. Since we've gone to the trouble of stamping the branch there, it's going to be most effective over here, where it's going over the top of the tissue paper. Just that little extra highlight. That's really rather pleasing altogether, I think. Well, it's pleasing to me. I hope it's pleasing to you. Good. So what I didn't do while I was thinking all those other things in the last break was find any words. So I will now find some alternatives and see what's going to take its place on the page. Back in a sec. I found them. I found the words in the clipping stickers. It didn't take long. They started jumping out. I didn't film it because I thought I could be here for hours looking for what I want, but as soon as I started looking, the first one that came was the winding garden path. And almost immediately after the winding garden path, a small bird flew before me. I dream of going back was the next one that came to my mind. For a moment, I dream of going back. The winding garden path. A small bird flew before me. Just a memory. I mean, I've slightly got goosebumps. Found poetry is a wonderful way of creating journaling words. Yes, I'm using this out of the clipping stickers books rather than going searching for my found poetry myself in books. But one of the joys about this set of stickers is that they are all taken from different books. That's why they're all slightly different colours of vintage paper. They're all slightly different fonts and sizes, because they come from actual books, and it's one of the reasons they have that sort of magic about them. Yes, of course, I could spend hours cutting phrases out of books, but mostly I want my books whole so that I can turn them into journals. If I start having ones where I go and there's lines cut out of them, well, maybe that's quite interesting to journal around. I don't know. But at the moment, the clipping stickers so often provide that little sort of magic random thought. And when I go to the pad, I see things I've never seen before. I swear I didn't know that there was a phrase saying a small bird flew before me. I didn't go to the clip-in stickers thinking, oh, I know there's one about a bird somewhere. No. And yet I've flicked through those stickers. I can't tell you how many times. This is about my third book of them. And I've flicked through time and again, and I can't say I've ever consciously noticed that there's one about a bird or one about a garden path. In fact, it's not the only one about a garden. There was another phrase about a garden, but it wasn't right for this page. For a moment, I dream of going back. The winding garden path. A small bird flew before me. Just a memory. I might, if I can get this brown pen to work, I might just go around those for a little bit of extra embedding. Oh dear, there's glue. That's not going to help the pen nib. Straight through the glue. I don't want to overdo that border, because I don't want those words to be the main focus of the page. There's plenty going on this page that I want the eye to be drawn to. The words should be a memory or a dream within it, not the most prominent element. I should have let the glue dry really before doing this. But just that sort of a little random outline is actually quite nice, not a solid version. I hope you can see I'm just wiping the pen nib as I go, because it's running through the acrylic glue, which obviously will put a stop to the pen altogether if it gets covered in the glue and it dries on there. I like this a lot. I am going to need to glue down these pages to the bit behind because that's now curling up, as you can see. So I might do that before zooming in for the close-up of these pages. But I hope that you've enjoyed that little quick bit of journaling with mostly leftovers, mostly extras and bits and bobs that were hanging around on the desk anyway. Thank you so much for your company, as always, and I hope that the spring weather is being kind to you, or if you've been at the other side of the globe, I hope that autumn is starting to bring a bit of freshness and coolth into your world. If you've enjoyed today's video, do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, I would love to have your company on this creative journey. As always, I'll put as many details in the description down below as I can. Look at the fingers. Yep, that's the sign of a good time. I'll put as many details in the description as I can and try maybe to link to a couple of the videos that some of these leftovers are from. But I can't make any promises on that front. If you're a follower, you'll know where they've come from. I'm quite inclined to leave some of this tissue paper sticking out because that's gonna, in the long run, that's gonna be a lovely extra texture in the book. So I've trimmed a little bit off there, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it fully. I'm gonna leave those bits of tissue coming out. So I will be diving in for a close-up. Do stick around for that. But for now, happy crafting all.